Thank you so much to all of our neighbors throughout the 12th Congressional District, which includes Oakland County communities, Western Wayne, and Detroit. I want you all to know we have an amazing speaker tonight from the state, our Michigan State Budget Office, Alexis Howard. She's going to be discussing the impacts of the recent government shutdown and the impacts in Michigan around the healthcare crisis, and of course, the cut to SNAP benefits. So again, really important for us to be able to continue to work with our state partners, especially with a lot of changes and discussions around the budget right now on the federal level. So as you all know, my team and I take huge pride in the fact that we run a neighborhood service center model in our two service centers, one in Southfield and one in Detroit. And one of the things that we've been able to help folks, no matter who the president is to be able to help them through various challenges that their families are facing. And we know that bills and legislation in our fight here in Washington, D.C. have to go hand in hand with, again, getting you through the challenges that you're facing every single day and making sure that government is working for you and that is centered on people. And so the neighborhood centers so far have returned close to, over $8 million directly in the pockets of many of our neighbors. And the neighborhood service centers have caseworkers and folks that have expertise on veteran benefits, Social Security, immigration, a number of issues regarding various programs like student loan forgiveness and so much more. Some of the successes we've had recently is helping one of our family members who since 2016 have been fighting with the Social Security Administration for their benefits. And we won, and after our advocacy from our team members, we were able to get this person, the resident in the 12th Congressional District, $131,000 and $131,712. They were able to retroactively actually apply those payments back from 2016. We also have been successful in helping many of our family members. We had a Garden City resident lose her father and couldn't find the medal that he received as a Coast Guard service member, and we were able to work with the Coast Guard and get that medal issued to the family. And we are incredibly proud of the fact that we've been able to do that to honor, again, the sacrifice of that family member. In Inkster, we had a resident call, been fighting with the IRS, and finally they called our office. It's a 2-year fight that they've had in the process, but we were able to work with the IRS and get them $21,996 back as a refund that they, again, deserved, and they were supposed to send it some time ago. But again, we've been able to work with these various agencies. We had another IRS case where we were able to get a resident in Beverly Hills over $16,000 that they were waiting on. And our fight, again, in making sure that government works for you includes FEMA, and we were able to get a Dearborn resident through an appeal process, and we were very successful and got them $9,000 in grant for a furnace replacement. So again, these are just some of many fights that we've had, and I could tell you we have Detroit residents who call us constantly with the fight with DTE, pushing back against some of the shutoffs, especially when they have medical conditions. And we've been able to work successfully in making sure that people have their power, their gas and light restored. So this is, again, many examples of what we've been able to do through the Neighborhood Service Center. I do want to talk about some of the legislative fight. As you all know, I introduced a very, very bold economic justice legislation. We call it economic dignity for all. And we know from nonpartisan policy agencies and organizations that have said that, in one particular one said that this would lower poverty in America by 42% and lower childhood poverty by 67%. And so the End Child Poverty Act is one of the bills, and it would provide a universal child benefit of $469 per child. If you're getting our e-newsletters, we're going to continue to update you all in regards to where that's going. And again, we're getting wide support from organizations across the nation that know that earned income tax credit, which is one of the most successful anti-poverty programs, is not cutting it anymore, that we got to do more. We also introduced the Baby Bonus Act. This would provide every family with $2,000 upon the birth of a child. This is something that's already happening throughout the state of Michigan. I know it started in Flint and other places, but it's similar to what they call the RX program. And again, this is something that is very important for child development and making sure that families have what they need to create economic stability for the child. The other bill is the Building Our Opportunities to Survive and Thrive Act. And many of you remember that in my first term, we introduced the BOOST Act. And this, again, is another way of providing direct assistance, especially now with starvation wages steady. We don't see wages going up. We see actually costs going up, not only in healthcare, but groceries, auto insurance, and so much more. So this BOOST Act would help with regular cash assistance that, again, will make a huge difference for our families. The next one I want to talk about, and this is something that was discussed in a committee hearing today, is the use of technology, the use of the fact that many big grocers like Kroger, like Walmart, like Target are now looking into doing what they call surveillance pricing. And what this is what our bill does is it's called Stop Price Gouging in Grocery Stores Act. The Stop Pricing Gouging in Grocery Stores Act would prohibit any price fixing, increasing, jacking up the prices at grocery stores using your personalized information. Many are wanting to venture into consumers' sensitive personal information toward, using those towards raising prices, many of you. Grocery prices, as you know, have skyrocketed. I've seen statistics as up as 28% increase. And major grocery chains are now wanting to use our personal data using electronic shelf labels and, again, surveillance technology to exploit shoppers and hike prices. And so we want to push back against those that are using that kind of technology. The other important bill, I think, is around auto insurance. As you might see, every 2 years is the average of what I hear from many of my constituents of having to go shop again and around because their insurance continues to go up. I've seen it go up in the last 2 years up to 40%. And the Prohibit Auto Insurance Discrimination Act is critical. This is a bill that I've been pushing and getting more and more wide support for because it's the use of non-driving factors. So many of you remember, we used to, my time when I first got auto insurance, they would ask me, how far do I drive? What kind of car do I drive? Do I have any tickets? But today, you are getting asked by auto insurance companies non-driving factors like your employment status, your occupation, whether or not you're married, your education level, your zip code, your credit score, home ownership status. All of those have nothing to do whether or not you are a safe driver and should not be used to calculate your auto rates. And what we know today from a study from Poverty Solutions in Ann Arbor is that they showed us that somebody with a higher credit score but with a DUI, drinking under the influence, was paying 3 times less than somebody with a clean record, no DUI, and a lower credit score. And again, as you can see, again, these rates are applied in a way that's very discriminatory. And so we got to focus on using driving-related factors in determining auto insurance rates and not allowing corporate greed within the auto insurance agency to continue to increase the cost on all of us. Next is a Fix Our Flooded Basements Act. I was surprised after a number of national emergencies declared and then the state declaring the emergency and then, of course, the federal government coming in and FEMA coming in, that basements weren't covered. Our bill would ensure that people who have suffered from the flooding can live safely and repair their basements in their homes. Why this is important is 2 years after the last designation for emergencies, we had seniors, especially those on fixed income, call us and say now they have mold in their home. So we want to make sure that we don't allow our neighbors being trapped in a dangerous or uninhabitable home and conditions, again, that impact their health. And right now, mold, mildew, and water damage can do that in our basement. And we know in Midwest, basements are part of our home. And I know that much of in creating FEMA and some of the protection was for those that lived, on the coastal line. But now we know not only in Detroit, but even in Cleveland and other places in the Midwest, we see more and more need to reform FEMA to make sure, again, that they include the whole house, not just some of it. Lastly, is our Tax Excessive CEO Pay Act. It would force, us to grapple with corporate greed in our country. Right now, the salaries of America's top executives is obscene. The bill would raise taxes on corporations that pay their executives more than 50 times the wages of their workers. This is important to know. For instance, Amazon, folks that work at distribution centers in Amazon, in Livonia, in Romulus, in our community, many of them qualify right now for food assistance and other public assistance because they're getting paid starvation wages while the CEO and the top executives are getting paid these large amounts. And again, it's really important that we continue to push back against that. I think lastly, and this is because the Affordable Care Act and the emails we've been receiving have been heart-wrenching. The Affordable Care Act, no matter what your opinion of it is, know that there's a lot of our neighbors that have been forced to go on the Affordable Care Act to get health care coverage. And right now, without the tax credits that the federal government would cover against some of these higher costs, it's a kind of what we call tax credits to help bring down the health insurance premiums. Those are expiring the end of this year. And so now there's, of course, open enrollment and notices have already been sent out to families, especially families with, two or more in the family. We're seeing them skyrocket. And so right now I have signed on to a bill on the floor that would extend the Affordable Care tax credits to 3 years. And now there's also discussion of possibly 2 years. What I do know is I want to be laser focused on making sure we have, relief for many of our families that cannot afford these tax credits to expire. We're talking about 20, 30, 40% increases for families. So again, we're going to be focused on that. I do want to give some time for our Ms. Howard from the budget office. I do want folks to know, we might have another fight with the government shutdown, and a lot of folks might not realize, but the budget that was passed and reopened government is temporary. They call it a continuing resolution. Basically extends, again, being able to keep government open and functioning until January 30th. So January 30th will be, again, another fight and debate if we can't get these budgets, the regular budgets, passed for this year. And so just look out for that conversation and make sure, if you have any questions or anything like that, that you please reach out to our office. We learn so much more when you all engage us. I can tell you I've learned more about how the Affordable Care Act works because you called and told us what the impact is in regards to tax credits. I learned more about SNAP benefits and how it's not just the average $6 per day, but really how does it impact your life? And over again, my team and I focus on any hearing, anything like that. We bring your stories with us. We bring those impacts with us. Because I think a lot of my colleagues are disconnected. The majority of them are millionaires. They're in an income bracket that will fully not understand, what it means to go hungry, what it means to not afford your health care bills, and what it means to see those auto insurance rates skyrocket. And so it is important that you all continue to engage our team in our office and know, again, my door is always open to all of you. I'm going to hand it back to Derek, and then we're going to get folks to start the conversation regarding the impact at the state level.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman, for those important updates on the work that we are doing in Congress. Just a reminder for folks who may have joined us later on in the call, if you have any questions for the Congresswoman throughout this event, please press *3 to connect with someone from our team to get your question. Once we collect your question, I'll try to bring you live on the call to ask your question to the Congresswoman. And just so you know whether you are able to speak with the Congresswoman directly tonight or not, you will have the opportunity to leave a voicemail at the end of this program, and someone from our team will definitely return your call. So if your question is not addressed during this town hall, you will still hear from someone from our team. And with that, I would like to thank Ms. Howard for joining us this evening, Ms. Howard from the State Budget Office, and turn it over to her.
Thank you so much, and hi everyone. My name is Alexis Howard, and I'm the State Budget Office's legislative analyst focused on federal policy. Our office is responsible for coordinating all aspects of the state budget, including drafting the executive budget recommendation, negotiating the budget with the legislature, and implementing the budget throughout the year while ensuring fiscal balance. Federal funding plays a critical role in the state budget. This year, Michigan anticipates receiving roughly $28.2 billion in federal funds, making up nearly 40% of our budget. These federal funds support Medicaid, workforce training, child care, services for disabled individuals, airport safety, pothole repairs, lead pipe replacement, and hundreds of other programs designed to keep Michigan families safe and healthy. I'm going to spend a few minutes today talking about the recent federal government shutdown and its impact on state programs, how we are preparing for the next federal funding deadline, and other federal actions that affect Michiganders and the state budget. Here, Congress has a deadline of September 30th to pass spending bills that fund the federal government and its grant programs. If the September 30th deadline passes without Congress passing each of its spending bills, the federal agencies that have not been funded shut down. This year, no federal spending bills were signed by the deadline, and we were in a full federal government shutdown from October 1st until November 12th. The impacts of a federal shutdown are complex and context-dependent. Not all programs are impacted right away, and some programs are not impacted at all. For example, some programs like the U.S. Postal Service, Social Security, and federal highway programs are funded outside of the annual appropriations process and continue with minimal impacts during a shutdown. Some programs, like K-12 special education grants, are funded in advance, with schools having received a full year's worth of funding in July. Other shutdown impacts worsen over time. Some very public examples of this are missed paychecks for federal employees and delays at airports, but programs for seniors fall into this category too. Other programs were able to continue operating through the shutdown because they are partially funded by state resources or had funding left over from last fiscal year. Part of my job at the State Budget Office is to make sure that we have a plan in place if the federal government shuts down so that we can protect Michigan residents to the best of our ability. Before and throughout the shutdown, my team maintained close contact with state departments and the governor's office on changing federal guidance, upcoming impacts, and resources to help people that were affected. The delay in November SNAP benefits was one of the most wide-reaching impacts from the federal shutdown, with 1.4 million Michigan residents relying on timely payments to put food on the table. When the shutdown delayed benefits, Michigan sent $4.5 million to the Food Bank Council to support food distribution around the state. This action reflects Governor Whitmer's commitment to ensuring no one in Michigan goes hungry. In the most recent state budget, the governor made crucial investments in the SNAP program and ensured that we can continue to provide free breakfast and lunch to each of Michigan's over 1 million public school students. The shutdown also weighed heavily on federal workers, and many went without paychecks. We have 30,000 plus civilian federal workers in the state of Michigan, and Michigan's Unemployment Insurance Agency, or UIA, published timely guidance to support furloughed workers. On November 12th, the President signed 3 of the 12 federal spending bills into law. This means that certain agencies, including USDA and the VA, are funded through September 30th, 2026. The law also included a continuing resolution that funds the rest of the federal government until January 30th next year. As we work with state departments to prepare for the possibility of a partial federal shutdown at the end of January, SNAP, WIC, the Women, Infants, and Children Program, and the VA have already been fully funded for the year through the spending bills that Congress passed last month. However, we are watching potential impacts that could affect federal workers, TSA, air traffic controllers, low-income housing, programs for seniors, and more. Outside of federal shutdowns, we also continue to track the real impacts that federal policies have on families. Tariffs have raised grocery store prices and hurt Michigan farmers. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act that congressional Republicans passed this summer cut Medicaid and created work requirements, more frequent redeterminations, and other changes starting in 2027 that will result in people losing their health care. In this year's state budget, we included a provision that will fight back against these cuts, protecting $2.7 billion in Medicaid funding each year. Governor Whitmer and our partners in the legislature have worked over the past several years to make transformational investments that leverage every federal dollar possible to benefit Michiganders. The State Budget Office remains prepared and engaged to respond to federal shutdowns and other policy changes out of Washington, D.C. We are so grateful to have Congresswoman Tlaib as a true partner in Congress, fighting for her constituents and working to protect Medicaid, SNAP, and other critical programs every day for Michigan families. As always, free confidential assistance and referrals to local programs and support services can be accessed by dialing 211 or by going to mi211.org. Thank you so much for having me, and with that, I will turn it back to the Congresswoman's team.
Thank you so much, Howard, for joining us tonight. With that, I am going to start taking questions from our residents. Our first question is from Ms. Darden from Westland, who has a question about the Supreme Court. Ms. Darden, can you hear us?
Yes.
And you can ask your question now.
Okay, because I didn't know if this is appropriate to ask this question, because it seemed like this is related to the state of Michigan. You know what Ms. Rashid was talking about. But anyway, the question was, with the Supreme Court that we now have, I don't understand why, if they are breaking the law and upholding what they pledged, you know, as far as the Constitution, I'm trying to figure out, why is it that they can get away with breaking the law and pleasing Donald Trump when they're not upholding the law? Why is it that they still remain in office?
Ms. Darden, that's an absolutely appropriate question for this call. And no, any question that you have, local, state, or federal. And I think this is an important conversation because the Supreme Court debate has been consistent since I got here in 2019, where I supported expansion of the court, some reforms that were needed because there was conflict of interest, especially with some of the newer newer folks that were confirmed. So I'm on the bill. It's H.R. 3544, and it's the Supreme Court Tenure Establishment and Retirement Modernization Act of 2025. And then there's another one. It's 3513, and it's the Supreme Court Ethics, Recusal, and Transparency Act of 2025. Why those are important is because we actually don't have clear, direct requirements on Supreme Court justices when it comes to corruption and conflicts of interest. And this would make it very clear and very precise that, you know, from Justice Clarence Thomas to others who have direct relationships with folks that are before, including companies, big pharma, billionaires. Again, a lot of people have been expressing concern from the fact that, you know, they don't have a code of ethics right now. And I know it's hard for the American people to think 2025 we don't have this. I think it's because we're in a different world right now where, yes, Clarence Thomas and and some of the other Supreme Court justices are actually not recusing themselves. Their conflict of interest, and we know that they're doing what they're doing is illegal and should be illegal. And again, unfortunately, right now we don't have a law that prevents what's happening. And so, please know, Ms. Darden, keep talking about this, and because I really hope this can be a nonpartisan, bringing everybody together, because everyone agrees corruption within the Supreme Court justice should be prohibited, and it should be very clear that you cannot oversee a decision or something that impacts the whole country, but because that person's your friend and you've been on their boat, or, and this is a true case, paid for trips, been on the jet with them. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you there are specific cases where they have a direct conflict of interest because of a personal and a beneficial relationship, and they should not be overseeing these cases. But I completely agree with you.
Our next question is from Ms. Lois Cobb from Detroit. Ms. Cobb, you are on the line now with the Congresswoman.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am, we can hear you. No, you're fine.
Okay. I had just a few. One about specifically whether the cuts to health care, the Medicaid, and the Medicare, also the student loans, are they going to be continued? Can they be cut? What are the Social Security cuts? I know this SSI and Social Security, and that's confusing to me. Also, the COLA, cost of living, is supposedly a check. I'm confused about that. And, of course, home repair grants. Anything new in the pipeline for that? And I agree 100% about the young woman asked a question about the Supreme Court. I teach, and one of the questions, critical thinking questions I asked my students was, what are the pros and cons of the lifetime positions of the Supreme Court? And which would they choose? The term limits, like Congress persons, or for them to be in their lifetime? And I kid you not, every last one of my students in all three classes, these are diverse students, age, the race, ethnicity, the whole shot, they all said term limits, and it's because of what's been happening with the Supreme Court, basically starting from President Reagan's time until now. That they weren't even thinking about the Supreme Court because they never thought that they would be this unfair or breaking the law. So just those things I just wanted you to touch on. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. And please know that with this president or before that, Social Security is something that has been continued to be an issue. And so there's a bill called the Social Security 2100 Act. And this is an important piece of legislation that would help ensure that there's funding for Social Security. And this is something, again, it's important to know that, the legislation, that there was an announcement for cost of living, about 2.8% cost of living adjustment for 2026, which is only about $56 per month. And so we are trying to be much more aggressive about this. And so we want to be able to make sure that we have a fully funded Social Security Administration that does have the increase that is needed for many of our families that, again, are facing, know that this is their only form of income right now. And so for 90 years, the federal government has, created this program, and it is something that, again, has kept people to be able to retire with dignity. And unfortunately, we continue to see more and more of folks not able to make a living based on what the income is now. And so we haven't enacted any comprehensive enhanced benefits in 50 years. And so we know the Social Security 2100 Act would be able to address, again, the cost of living increases and be able to make adjustments that make sure that people are, not worried about it, that it's fully funded. And so, again, this is something that the Social Security Act of 2100 addresses. So we'll continue to push back. Now, with the cost of living, I heard cost of living, auto insurance, student loans, any specific issues, especially around student loan and whether or not you qualify for various programs, still continue to call our office and see if you qualify for anything. We know veterans that are disabled, there might be some programming for relief for student loans. For cost of living, that we continue to push back against corporate greed. I talked about going after those companies that pay their CEOs and executives these extreme amounts but leave people with starvation wages. And so, again, it's really important that, we push back against those that increase the cost in the pandemic, and it's never gone down. With auto insurance, it's one of the number one issues that we hear from folks about. Until we can push back and narrow what they use as factors into calculating our rates, I think we're going to continue seeing them apply it in a discriminatory way. We find that people that are lower income, working class folks are getting charged a larger amount than those that might be in more affluent areas. And so this is why it's important to continue to support the Prohibiting Auto Insurance Discrimination Act. Know that the last study I saw for statewide says that 90% of zip codes in the state of Michigan are unaffordable auto insurance rates, and so we know this is a statewide issue, but many of my other colleagues are seeing it in their state as well.
Thank you so much for that question. Our next question, we're getting a few questions about Social Security and Medicaid, so I'm just going to read this one out for the Congresswoman to answer. But Congresswoman, can you talk about the updates at the federal level to the cuts to Medicaid and what's happening with Social Security, and also Medicaid not covering costs like dental care, which our residents are concerned about?
So right now, that's true about the dental care, and that's why I'm part of the Medicare for All caucus. Medicare for All would cover dental care. And that's why, again, we continue to push and say the Band-Aid that we have in regards to the way the system is for Medicare and Medicaid is just, it's not adequate enough. People are paying more out of pocket, and you know, people have the right to access vision care, as well as dental care. And so no, Medicare for All is something that is incredibly popular across all political lines, and we continue to push for that. Social Security, so with the Medicaid cuts that you saw in the budget betrayal that got passed a couple of months ago, those changes that will impact thousands of people throughout our congressional district will not take effect until January 2027. So if you've heard people say they got cut off, please have them call our office right away, because it's probably because documents need to get to caseworkers or verification did not go through. But for some of the major changes that you saw where, again, nonpartisan agencies have said this will lead to people getting cut off Medicaid, will not be implemented until January 2027, meaning we have time to continue to try to reverse what this Congress has done. And it is our hope that we are able to do that, hopefully, and be able to make sure that people have health care coverage. Now, Social Security, many of my colleagues are claiming is being untouched so far. Again, we're keeping a close eye. We continue to monitor any discussion or conversation. I think since Elon Musk has left Doge and some other folks have transitioned away, you're hearing less of the threat to Social Security. But again, that does not mean that tomorrow they can't start the conversation again. No, again, Social Security 2100 would increase Social Security revenues by imposing Social Security like kind of a payroll tax to get us above the $400,000. Overall, it would, reduce the Social Security 75-year shortfall. Right now, we have a shortfall by about half. And so again, the bill would help, the bill's benefit increases will help, again, cover any kind of conversation about where we have enough money for people in the Social Security for a future generation. And so this, again, tries to help, includes 13 provisions that would increase Social Security benefits and try to apply it within like 5 years. And again, this is something that we have over 200 members of Congress supporting. We're trying to continue to push it forward and understand that, we need Social Security to be fully funded for 70 years and beyond. And so the Social Security 2100 makes sure that we do have it there and set up in a way that we're not constantly debating whether or not the funds will be there. We're wanting to make sure that it is, and I think there is enough support across the country to understand that everyone deserves to retire with dignity.
Thank you so much for those questions. Our next question is from Ms. Flowers from Redford Township, who has a cloud data centers. Ms. Flowers, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, and feel free to ask your question now to Congresswoman Tlaib.
Okay, my question has to do with the proposal of a data center in Southfield, Michigan. And with everything that I've heard about AI data centers, I don't want it. I don't want it anywhere near us. I mean, it's noise pollution, environmental pollution. I know Michigan has, I don't remember the percentage, but I know we have a lot of the world's fresh water. Why has the proposal made it far enough to even be a consideration? Like, how can we stop this? Is there any way to avoid it coming here? Because I don't know what it will do, but I'm not interested in finding out.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. I just gave a speech on the House floor opposing these in our communities. We've seen what they've done in other communities by raising rates, energy rates, as well as extracting, our fresh water. So I'm very concerned about the AI data centers that are being proposed all over Michigan, including Southfield. First, you should know that there are already many data centers in our communities right now that you might have been unaware of, and these facilities are used to power our phones and internet infrastructure. But what is being proposed in Saline and in Southfield right now and elsewhere are what they call AI data centers. So don't let any public official try to gaslight you, mislead you, oh, this is different. This is an AI data center, meaning they aren't being used to make sure your phone works, but instead they're being used to specifically power AI technology that nobody asked for, that are killing jobs and harming our environment and our water. So I've been speaking out against these AI data centers. If you follow me on social media, you can see I kind of went off on the floor because I need folks to look at where they are now. Ask the residents. Overwhelmingly, you should know, Ms. Flowers, they all saw their energy rates, their electricity rates go up, and we know that the amount of extraction of water is so obscene that I think none of us would ever want to sacrifice, again, our Great Lakes for people to make a profit off of AI technology. That, again, we have yet to see the true benefit for all of us. If anything, it is killing jobs.
Thank you so much for that question. We're getting a lot of questions about auto insurance. So, Congresswoman, can you talk about the recent legislation we have introduced to take on the auto insurance crisis?
Yeah. Thanks, Derek. So before auto insurance, Ms. Flowers, if you're still on, know that the proposal in South is just a proposal. So it's early enough that it can be defeated. And so please make sure you are engaging the Southfield City Council and that they hear you loud and clear. What has been successful in Ypsilanti and Saline is the organizing around the residents to go out. And I think it's just really important to know we can fight this and we can defeat them and tell them not in our backyard. With auto insurance, as you guys know, what's incredibly frustrating is the fact that, again, they're using discriminatory factors. All of the questions they're asked, whether or not you're married. And again, I've watched Congresswoman Debbie Dingell told me as soon as John Dingell passed away, and she gave me permission to share this story, her marital status changed to widow, and what she saw is a $1,000 increase on her auto insurance. Of course, it's Debbie Dingell, and she's calling everybody and, making sure they know that was wrong. But none of us should be fighting back and pushing back against the auto insurance companies, again, increasing our rates for no reason at all. And again, they'll say this or that, or it's because it's no fault. But what we've seen overwhelmingly is that, in the past, we used to, if we got older, our insurance rates would go down. But what we're also only seeing right now, no matter age, is it's going up. Even though many of my seasoned residents are driving less, not. Again, should be considered they have good records, driving records, but that's not weighed as I think should be weighed at those driving factors as much as these personal factors. I'll tell you a story, and this is a true story. A resident told me that their insurance agent, asked the GPA of their college age student, their child that's in college, and I was like, that's ridiculous. And I looked into it. Literally this past summer, I got asked the same question. What does, my eldest son, what's his GPA? I said, what the heck does that have to do with whether or not I'm a good driver? Why is all of these non-driving factors being layered and over, that none of this private information, one, should even be accessible to auto insurance industry? And so I think, know that the Prohibiting Auto Insurance Discrimination Act is something that we're going to continue to fight for. This is, again, my fourth term, and I'm continuing to introduce this to educate my colleagues. This is beyond this idea of debating whether or not this is about no fault or health coverage. The fact that they're asking us these personal information, and the fact that studies showing that somebody, again, with a terrible driving record but a better credit score is getting the discount that should be going to the good the driver with a clean record, but a lower credit score. That just tells you right then and there that this is not about whether or not you're a good driver. And so I think it's really important to know that we're going to force them and narrow, again, what they use to calculate our auto rates. and we cannot continue to allow them to use these discriminatory factors. None of that is their business. I don't know what your education level has to do with whether or not you're a good driver. I think there's a lot of MDs and PhDs and lawyers out there that are not great drivers and have a lot more tickets than some of my residents and seniors in my community that are seeing over 40% increase to auto insurance. So we're going to continue to push back. Please do not stop talking about auto insurance. I think, what happened a couple years ago at the state level, and I know the governor and others, sending out the small little amount of checks, but guess what? All of that is now on your auto insurance rate. All of us have seen the increase to rates. I have not met one person that said their insurance rates went down.
Thank you so much for that question. Our next question is from Ms. Willie White, who has a question about the next budget proposal and protecting health insurance for seniors. Ms. White, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
You're now live with the Congresswoman.
Okay. Thank you, Congresswoman, for your dedicated work and hard work on the behalf of your constituents. But my question was, are you going to continue to fight to protect our insurance and our cuts to Medicare and Medicaid and to keep our health care and not allow it to the Obamacare rates to expire? Because I'm paying an addition too much for my Medicare, and I have to, in order to get dental and vision coverage, I have to carry a supplemental insurance. And I think that's unfair because when we get our raise in January, half of it is going to my increased Medicare with no extra benefits. So,
no, I appreciate you, and I think.
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I think I appreciate your standing firm on that, the medical part of the new bill that's coming out, or the one that is voted on.
Well, so know this, that today my colleagues voted for over $800 million for a Pentagon budget that can't pass an audit. They can't pass an audit. So they always seem to have money for war and the war machine and the War Department, but they don't seem to want to find the money's there, to use it towards getting people dental coverage, vision coverage, to expand healthcare coverage. And I think it's important for everyone on this call to know that, I tell people, I feel like our country doesn't have healthcare, we have sick care. And the sicker that many of our residents get, the older my residents get, from long-term care nursing homes to those that, again, are fighting cancer, diabetes, and so many, health challenges, that there's just constant profit-driven schemes that is just going to charge people more the sicker you get, instead of us focusing on making sure that we have healthcare coverage for everyone. And I think it's important to know that, again, it's built in the system that is driven by profit and driven by big pharma and these folks that, again, benefit from, forcing the government to subsidize for their greed. And, Medicaid is a Band-Aid. Everyone knows this. And they're about to rip the Band-Aid off with these changes that they want to implement in January 2027. So continue to talk about this in a way that I think is impactful, is what you just said, that this is not, some sort of privilege you have. This is literally a lifeline. Some people without Medicaid and coverage are not going to be able to thrive. They're going to be they're not going to be able to, again, have what they need to be able to thrive. And so then that leaves many of you with these experiences and challenges, which I think lead to lack of human dignity as you get older. And so please know, from Medicare for All to pushing back against the Medicaid cuts to ensuring that, again, we prioritize here at home rather than continuing to take on these wars in other countries and funding other countries, that we should be focusing here at home.
Thank you so much, Ms. White. Our next question is from Ms. Cynthia Reynolds from Southfield, who has a question about supporting mental health services.
Hello?
Ms. Reynolds, can you hear us? Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I can. Hello, everyone. I have a question about mental health. I'm a mental health professional, and we service MDHHS clients, children, and their families. And there's a real mental health crisis in our community, as a lot of people know. So I just wanted to know if there were any new or additional funding for mental health, because even as a provider, I don't have anybody that I can send them to for resources beyond what we're doing, because our resources are so sparse. And the state's compensation, I'm not complaining. I don't want, my name is on record. It's below.
No, not with anybody but me.
Yeah, but it's way below the commercial rate. And I like the term that you used earlier when you said starvation wages, and I'm not trying to say that we're starving, but, the people that I hire and that serve our community, they do have master's degrees. They have, PhDs, and they're out in the trenches, like going to people's homes, dealing with domestic violence and sexual abuse, so many other, things, and we're not being compensated. I hear that there's funding, but I'm in the trenches and I don't see the funding.
No, we and just so you know, we know for a fact that church nurses and teachers are all getting second jobs because they're not getting paid well enough. And so, yeah, absolutely. So I'm helping lead 14 different bills in support of mental health resources. And I want folks to know how important this is, because it impacts every part, I think, of our community and our neighborhoods. The majority of my chiefs of police have told me the number one calls they get is, not car theft or different, it's mental health calls. And they said to me that it's literally the number one calls they get. They're going to the same homes. They're dealing with the same various challenges for families because of the lack of access to mental health resources. And they're not equipped, nor are they trained to address some of those issues. And so the 14 different bills include the Mental Health Services for Students Act, the Mental Health Emergency Responder Act, the Mental Health Crisis Response Act, and so many more. But I think what's important to know too is, we're continuing to fight with the Trump administration right now. So they're attempting to cut mental health services cuts, which is already at the bare minimum. So far, 8 different letters sent to the Trump administration warning them that we're not going to allow the cuts to happen in this budget, to push back against any cuts to mental health resources and services. And as someone that, again, has multiple family members with bipolarism, multiple family members who have experienced trauma, from trauma from sexual abuse to trauma from, other forms of kind of gun violence. I can tell you right now, hands down, the continuum of care for people that need those kinds of services is very much lacking in our country, and that's why these bills are incredibly important. I am exhausted in 7 years I've been here, seeing people say everything right, but not actually fund it. And I continue to tell them, and I want you to know this, Ms. Reynolds, I continue to tell them it's great, continue to study, continue to gather data, continue to create commissions, but at the end of the day, it is about where do we get the services, where, we need to fund it better and more, and when the continuum. I don't like that. It's like, we'll do it this year, but not next year. You constantly hear this kind of throwing crumbs at it. And I think, I push back against them and tell them, have you ever talked to your police chief? Because your police chief is telling you that they cannot police away the mental health crisis. You need to know the hospitals right now cannot handle the mental health crisis. And so we need to do the community-based work and making sure that we have these programs in our neighborhood.
Thank you so much for that question. Our next question I'm going to read out loud. Are there any bills or legislation to support local home repairs or access to affordable and quality home repairs? We've had a few questions from our residents about this evening.
And I'm glad that everyone's talking about it, because I always tell my team in D.C. and my caseworkers and legislative caseworkers all know, after auto insurance, I hear a lot about home repair. And for me, one of the $52 million I got for the district, every cycle I consistently find a nonprofit organization or a city that is willing to apply for home repair grants and dollars. So this year we were able to put in a multi-million-dollar request. It's not passed yet, but for the city of Southwood, because we're hearing from seasoned residents there that are now being pushed out of their home because they can't take care of their home in their retirement. we were able to get over $2 million alone for a big chunk of my community in Detroit that were impacted by flooding. And then we also have been working with Cody Rouge and others neighborhood about getting, again, more resources for home repair dollars. Much of the home repair dollars are going to come through various programs through HUD, and that's where I think, in the previous big legislation, we called it Build Back Better, if you guys remember that, during the Biden administration. And one of the biggest disappointment was the fact that they decided to do infrastructure, meaning roads and of course broadband and everything, which is important, but housing is also infrastructure. And that's something that Congresswoman Chair, she was the chair of our committee, Maxine Waters, continued to tell them. And I just want you all to please continue to push, not only just Republicans, but Democrats, about the importance of housing as infrastructure. We need to invest in more in housing. And, of course, new housing is essential. But as my team and I know, we know that it's also about sustaining our current housing, but also knowing how can we keep our families in their homes. Much of the millions of dollars we got in home repair grants, they were gone within, months. That's how much the demand is. And some of my seniors who may need adjustments to their bathroom, to their home, ramps to their homes, again, that demand is increasing, not decreasing, and it's because we haven't treated housing as infrastructure. And so, again, we're going to continue to push back at this narrative saying we're just going to work on new housing. New housing is not the only thing we need. We need to make sure that we stay in our current housing stock. So, but thank you so much for continuing to pay attention to that issue. And, my chief of staff and I have met with Habitat for Humanity and others, and we're going to continue to work with them and saying any home repair grant program that needs more federal support, we're going to offer earmarks and direct funding for those programs and keep pushing my Republican colleagues to support it.
Thank you so much. Our next question is from Ms. Logan from Redford Township, who has a question about the housing crisis. Ms. Logan, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. I have two questions. It's not. One question is, I'm with the food prices so high. I'm 53 years old. I work 40 hours a week, barely making it. Obviously, as you know that. My doctors, I'm bipolar and dyslexic, and they told me to try to get help with the food or something. And every time I try to apply, they tell me I make too much money, and they deny me. And the second thing is, my dad and my dad's was a Vietnam vet, and his furnace broke down like 3 days ago, and they told him that he tried to do loans. Well, you can't do loans because
Ms.
he has
Logan, what broke down? What broke down?
His furnace in his trailer.
Furnace. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And my dad was my dad's a Vietnam vet. And
okay,
they're both.
So Mr. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. They're both seniors, and I'm afraid right now they're only using portable heaters in a trailer.
Yeah.
And every time they try to call somebody, they said that no, we don't do anything like that because you live in a trailer. It's their responsibility. So they keep calling and they call, and they finally said that they can find a place, people can get them there for $10,000. Well, I'm afraid that they can't make $10,000 because they don't make much money. They're both on Social Security. And
yep. So we know that there's so we work with the Wayne County Veterans Office, and they have some discretionary money. So what we're going to do is get your information, Mr. Logan. We will need to talk to your dad directly. So if you can, hold on to the line and let's get connected. I have been able to work with our community action agencies, a number of food banks and others, especially because I know that even those that made a little bit, they say, oh, they're over the income. Sometimes they're having a couple bad months here and there, and some of these food banks are not asking for income verification in the sense of like, if you're struggling and you need food, they really have a very flexible program, open program where if you're hungry and you're in need, they'll be able to work with you. So if you want, Mr. Logan, let's get you connected. And Redford Interface is the food bank that distribution site that I work with in Redford Township. Let's get you connected to them. And then let's get you connected to folks for the VA assistance. And again, we have 4 different programs that will help veterans with issues regarding their home. It's not big major repairs, but I believe a furnace does cover what they cover because it's essential. Is that okay,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Logan? Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Logan, and we'll make sure to follow up after this call. We have another caller, Miss Michelle Eby from Southfield, who has a question about ACA subsidies being extended. And I know that we're running short on time, so I'm just going to ask you, Congresswoman, the following question as well. Maybe you could answer them both in one, which is a question about what's currently happening with Trump attempting to dismantle the Department of Education.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're going to try to do. They're already making some changes right now where they're cutting staff, even though it is unlawful. And I know there's a court case right now pushing back against some of those changes. Just know, like the NAACP and others have filed cases, an injunction against the administration from eliminating the Department of Education. Just so everyone is clear, it is unlawful to go around Congress to dismantle a whole department. He needs the authorization and permission of the Congress. And know that there is a colleague of mine, a Republican colleague, that actually introduced the bill. That bill has not moved. So if it was something of a priority for the U.S. House of Representatives, I think it would have moved by now. Hopefully that does not happen anytime soon or ever. But we are fighting back and pushing back against the claim that they want to dismantle the Department of Education. And it's through litigation, which I believe litigation is resistance, and the fact that we are able to use various organizations outside of Congress. We don't have legal standing to basically file the lawsuit to push back against the dismantling. Know that Department of Education came about in many ways because of this discriminatory nature around access, quality, and so forth in communities across the nation. There's a Department of Civil Rights within the Department of Education that is being dismantled. There is an area, again, for our special needs students that can lean on, again, to make sure that they are able to access what is federally required services, wraparound services that they need. So we're going to continue to push back. With the Affordable Care Act, there's a serious conversation this week. Again, I'm not sure what the Senate will do. I cannot answer what the Senate would do. They're the ones who cut a deal on their end and have not actually proposed any extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits. But on our end, there is a Republican and Democrat who are proposing a 2-year extension of the Affordable Care Act. And so we're hoping we get enough support for that. Originally, myself and many of the Democratic leadership wants 3 years. But I think for me at this point, we're going to be emailing everyone that emailed us about ACA, asking them what they think. But any relief right now for our families, a year or 2 years, is relief they need right away, because the tax credits expire at the end of this month, and they have put us in put the whole country in a very, very tough spot. And we're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars for families with children, and some that are literally in the middle of treatment. We had somebody testify who's in the middle of chemo treatment, has cancer. It's not like they can stop having cancer. And their rates would skyrocket without the extension of the Affordable Care Act. But we're going to continue to fight back, and if we get 2 years, that's, again, 2 years for our families. So, thanks.
Well, I know that we are at time, so I want to thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And I just want to take a moment to let everyone know who asked us a question that is specific to casework or federal assistance with federal agencies, that our amazing casework team will follow up with you after this call, and you will receive a call from us. And for the folks who still have questions or concerns who we were unable to get to on this call tonight and still want to ask them, I just want to remind folks to please stay on the line as this telephone town hall concludes, and you will have the opportunity to leave us a voicemail. And we look forward to following up after this call to make sure that all of your questions are answered. You can always call our office directly at 313-463-6220. And now I will turn it over to Congresswoman Tlaib to close us out for the evening.
No, thank you so much, Derek, and thank you so much to Ms. Howard from the State Budget Office. I think it's just really important to understand what the impact is at the state level of what is happening here on the federal level. All of you know the importance of staying engaged. Those that are been on this part of this town hall, the more information that you have that you can share with your neighbors, please do. Please also, don't wait until don't wait until you get cut or not sure what's going to happen. Reach out to us. Let us know what is going on. Let us make sure that we can get you the information that you need to reassure you. We'll continue to fight against corporate greed that's impacting auto insurance, groceries, the continuation of watching not only the president talked about working in the mental health field, but all fields where you see people having to have multiple jobs in our country and still can't own a home, where you see people struggling consistently. And I always feel very strongly that we should not allow people to be on this constant survivor mode, one emergency away from falling behind, weeks or months. And so we need to be able to allow people to truly thrive. That's human dignity, and that's what we deserve in our country. And so we'll continue to push back against this administration and some of the awful, cruel decisions that they're making consistently that, if anything, reveals just how disconnected they are with the struggle of the American people, no matter political affiliation. And again, we'll push our colleagues who will not move with urgency until we push them. And so again, thank you all so much for your incredible partnership. Please safe this holiday season. Check on your neighbors. Make sure you take care of each other. If you don't need that access to food assistance that you see a flyer on social media, share it with somebody that you think will. And again, showing up for each other is part of us fighting back against this awful and cruel, actions that we see right now on the federal level. It is an honor, truly an honor, to be able to serve you all in the United States Congress. Please have a wonderful evening.